Today, we're diving into one of the most famous papers in the history of psychology. See, back in 1956, a guy named George A. Miller published a work that basically found a hard-coded limit, a real bottleneck in the human mind. And his whole investigation, this quest that would totally change how we think about our own brains, it all revolved around a single, kind of mysterious number.
You gotta love how Miller kicks this thing off. Not with some dry academic jargon, but with the words of a man who feels like he's literally being haunted. For years, he kept seeing the same number pop up over and over again in his data. It was so relentless that he felt like he had no choice but to figure out what was going on. So, what was this number, and what secret was it hiding about our own minds?
So, let's follow Miller's breadcrumbs. His first stop was a bunch of really clever experiments designed to test the absolute limits of our perception. He wanted to find that precise breaking point, the spot where our ability to make simple judgments about sounds, sights, and even tastes just completely starts to fall apart.
To do this, scientists started treating the human brain kind of like a communication channel. Think of it like a pipe. You pour information in one end, that's the stimulus, and you see how much comes out the other end, the response, without getting all garbled up. That maximum amount of clear info that gets through, that's what they call channel capacity.
Now, to measure this information scientifically, they use a unit you've probably heard of, a bit. And it's actually a pretty simple concept. 1 bit is just enough information to choose between 2 options, like heads or tails. 2 bits lets you choose between 4 options, 3 bits, 8 options, and so on. It gives us this universal yardstick to compare totally different things.
And this is where things start to get weird. When they ask people to make judgments based on just one thing at a time, like trying to identify different musical pitches without a reference note, people could reliably handle about 6 of them. For loudness, it was around 5. For how salty a solution was, it was only about 4. A very clear pattern was starting to take shape.
And there it is. Across a whole bunch of different tests, as long as it was just one variable, the channel capacity, our brain's first big bottleneck, always hovered right around 7, plus or minus 2. It didn't matter if it was tones, lights, or tastes, people could reliably sort things into about 5 to 9 categories, and that was it.
Okay, so that's the first huge takeaway here. This limit seems to be baked right into our nervous systems. It's a finite, measurable thing. But, and this is a huge but, that discovery leads to a massive, glaring paradox that just doesn't seem to make any sense in the real world.
I mean, think about it. If our basic capacity is so tiny, how on earth do we navigate a world that's filled with thousands upon thousands of different faces and objects and words and ideas? Miller himself was totally stumped. His own experiments seemed to fly in the face of everyday reality. And this is where the mystery really takes a fascinating turn.
This is the light bulb moment. Miller realized he'd been mixing up 2 completely different kinds of limits. The first one, absolute judgment, that's limited by the sheer amount of information, by the bits. But the second one, our immediate memory, that's limited by something else entirely, the number of items. And this just nails the core idea. Our short-term memory doesn't really care how much information is packed into each item. It just cares about how many items or chunks you're asking it to hold. A single digit, that's 1 chunk. But a word like elephant, which contains way more information, your brain just treats that as 1 single chunk too. And the limit is right around 7 chunks. So, what's this all mean? Well, the fact that the number 7 pops up in both places, it isn't some deep, magical, unifying law of the mind. According to Miller, it's just a massive coincidence. But here's the cool part. It's a coincidence that accidentally led him to discover our brain's secret weapon for smashing right through its own limitations.
And that secret weapon is called recoding, or as we all know it now, chunking. This is the mental trick we use all the time to group a bunch of small, meaningless bits of information into a single, meaningful, larger unit. It's the magic our mind is constantly performing to make the world manageable.
Let's actually try it out. Take a look at this sequence of binary digits and try to memorize it. It feels impossible, right? It's 18 separate things, way beyond that 7-item limit. But watch what happens when we recode it.
Okay, so check this out. If we group those 18 digits into little chunks of 3 and then give each combination a new name, just a number from 0 to 7, that impossible string of 1s and 0s suddenly becomes 5, 0, 4, 7, 1, 6. That's just 6 chunks, totally within your memory span. We didn't change the information 1 bit, we just repackaged it.
So this is the process in a nutshell. You take a long, messy stream of information, you group it into meaningful patterns, you give those patterns a simple name, and then all you have to do is remember the names. This is exactly what old-school telegraph operators did, turning dits and daws into letters, then letters into words, then words into whole sentences. And hey, this isn't just a theory. Miller talks about his colleague, Sidney Smith, who basically ran this experiment on himself. His normal memory span was about 9 binary digits. But after weeks of practicing this recoding trick, he could reliably remember sequences of 40 binary digits. He boosted his memory capacity by over 400% just by mastering the art of chunking. You see, this whole process of chunking is absolutely fundamental. It is so much more than a memory trick. It's really the lifeblood of learning and thinking. It's how we learn to read. We see letters as chunks, not just a bunch of lines and curves. It's how we understand speech. We hear words as chunks, not just a stream of individual sounds. All right, so let's pull all this together. We've learned that our brain has these 2 key bottlenecks, one for making simple judgments and one for our immediate memory. And yeah, that magical number 7 pops up in both, but it's almost certainly just a coincidence. The real story, the big takeaway, is how we shatter those bottlenecks by recoding, by chunking information into meaningful units. It's one of the most powerful things our brain knows how to do.
And that brings us back to the mystery that started this whole thing. After his long and winding investigation, what was Miller's final verdict on the number that had been persecuting him for so long? He basically threw his hands up and said it was just a coincidence. A fascinating one for sure, but a coincidence nonetheless.
So in the end, the number 7 wasn't magical at all. But the quest to understand it led us to something way more profound. This deep insight into the incredibly powerful and flexible way our minds organize information to make sense of a ridiculously complex world. The journey was so much more important than the destination.
So I'll leave you with this question to chew on. Where are you using chunking in your own life? I mean, a phone number is the classic example, right? You don't remember 10 digits, you remember 3 chunks. But think bigger. How do you chunk information when you're learning a new skill, or a new language, or even just planning out your day? I guarantee you're doing it constantly, and getting better at it is a true cognitive superpower.